Yeah, probably not. I'm sure if you clicked on this video, you're interested in Deepwoken and you're wondering if you should buy it, but it really depends on a variety of factors, and I don't think Deepwoken really is for most people. In today's video, I want to discuss whether or not you should buy Deepwoken, as well as give some tips to new players who are interested in actually getting good at the game. I'll be live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Reaconteur 20 minutes after this video goes up, so check me out after you finish this video, and let's get straight into it. Alright, so should you buy Deepwoken? There's a few things you need to consider before buying. Do you prefer PvP or PvE games? Well, if you hate PvP in games and would rather just not engage in it, PvP in this game is occasionally and actually quite frequently unavoidable. So if you hate having to fight players and you just want to do PvP, that's kind of an issue because outright this game wants you to engage in PvP as well as PvE in at least a few scenarios, especially with stuff like Void Walkers and other PvP scenarios and just the hostility of the community in general. Not that you can't only play PvE if you want to, but every once in a while you will be forced into PvP scenarios. Along with that, do you have friends who play the game or are willing to get into it with you? If so, then playing with other people is a way to make the game more fun, but it can actually also be a negative crutch. Many people who start playing the game and play the game with their already established friends who are already good at the game, meanwhile they're freshies, never really get good at the game because they never learn how to play it on their own. That's why anyone who's played it since release is at least half decent compared to most other players. Even if you played with friends back then, you had to learn everything individually because nobody knew anything, so it was you and your friends learning together. So if you've got friends way better than you, it's probably better to not play with them or else you'll just be boosted and incapable on your own. And honestly, while I would recommend playing blind for the experience of it and the exploration, which is really fun, it's really not viable to do that nowadays and learn the game at a good pace with how many people play Deepwoken. And also, a lot of people like killing freshies, especially with the upcoming Purge week and the more recent hostility of the community due to recent announcements involving the game potentially going free. I'd say if you want to progress, watch video guides and solo progress, and just don't be afraid of wiping, because it will not only change how you play, but if you avoid bosses and you can't fight the enforcer solo because you're too scared, then you won't ever improve. I've seen so many people who are too afraid to fight the enforcer solo, so they get carried out of the depths by other people every time that they get out, when the enforcer isn't even a hard fight. And if you can't fight the enforcer solo, how are you supposed to fight anything solo? The point is you won't be able to learn the game like that. So I would say it's honestly better to learn the game on your own, or as someone else who doesn't play the game already, than playing with people who are already established, or joining one of those guilds that's supposed to make safe servers for freshies and stuff like that. Don't join one of those. You're gonna be bad at the game forever if you do, okay? Along with that, builds. So many people get into the game, they get obsessed with builds. They're like, oh, can I have this build? Can I have this build? They start watching video guides, making builds for PvP, for PvE and stuff. Stop, really, just stop. Builds can also be a crutch, and I'm not saying that builds are always a crutch. Like everyone that uses builds because they're bad at the game, but PvE builds more specifically can absolutely carry bad players through boss fights they don't actually know how to fight, especially depending on the era that you're using these builds on, because certain PvE builds have been super strong at different periods in time, to the point where they can solo events and bosses that you don't even actually have to learn because of how strong the builds are. Stop worrying about builds. Too many new players will come into my comments and say, how do I make a good build? You'll learn that in time because every good build is the same. First of all, like literally every good build is the exact same, except with like their attunement and weapon stats mixed up. There's like 4 variabilities for builds, and half of those are split between PvP and PvE anyway, so don't worry about that right now. Just put points in the stats that you think sound good and play the game normally, and keep trying to learn it normally before you obsess over builds, because if you get obsessed with builds as you get into the game, you're probably going to end up crutching on them too hard, when in reality you shouldn't need to. Like realistically, any decent player should be able to fight any boss, with the exception of like Heart of Enmity raid boss and stuff like that. You should be able to fight any normal humanoid boss on your own on any build. If you can't do like Ferryman or Duke 1v1 solo at power 20 with any build, you are not good at the game. Like you should be able to at that point in time. But many players don't learn how to do that because 1, they're either semi-build carried, 2, they're carried by their friends who are better than them, or 3, they are just too scared to fight these bosses, when you shouldn't be afraid to wipe. You should be wiping pretty actively, honestly, if you're learning the game. And it doesn't matter because your builds are all going to be trash anyway and you're not going to have anything good. If you have a legendary weapon, maybe pass it down, but don't be afraid of wiping. That is the number one thing I would tell a new player to do, is not to be afraid of wiping, because your builds right now don't matter. You're just gaining experience in real life. Now, other than that, the game is going to have a free week event pretty soon. For those of you wondering when, the date of its start is actually currently undecided, so we don't have any information on it. If you really are interested in Deepwoken, I'd say it's better to wait until the free week is announced to try it out and really decide if it's the game for you, because honestly, I don't think most people would like Deepwoken. It's probably the hardest game on Roblox to get into, and it really appeals to a very specific demographic of people, but if you like any of the following, I think you'd like Deepwoken. Any Souls-like game, so Elden Ring, Sekiro, etc., but more specifically specifically Elden Ring, and even more specifically than that, Sekiro, because I mean the game's combat system is kinda inspired off of Sekiro specifically, more than like Dark Souls or Bloodborne. So if you like Elden Ring or Sekiro, you'd probably like Deepwoken, especially the Valve Iron mode, which has by far the hardest bosses in the game, to the point where some of them are kinda unfair while you're learning them, since you have to reprogress every time to fight them. But if you're anything like me and you spent 70 attempts fighting Genichiro for the first time, then you'll like Valve Iron just as much as I did. And by the way, speaking of Sekiro, did you guys know I was once a top 70 Sekiro speedrunner on the glitchless 100% category? I know, crazy, right? Anyway, other than Sekiro and Elden Ring, you'd also probably like Deepwoken if you enjoyed a rogue lineage on Roblox. It's made by the same developers, but actually a much harder game with more flawed systems. The only downside is that if you liked rogue lineage combat a little too much, then you might not like Deepwoken's combat nearly as much. Also, this is kind of irrelevant because a vast majority, if not all people who have played rogue lineage have definitely played Deepwoken at some point in time. If you're like the 0.1% of people who tried out rogue lineage, liked it for a while, and then, you know, never caught up on the news and never figured out Deepwoken was made by the same people by some rare chance, you'd probably like Deepwoken if you liked rogue lineage. If you like hard games in general, you'd like Deepwoken. But the thing is, most people don't like hard games because they like playing video games to avoid stress. Another point to consider is the specifications of each update the game gets. Yes, we're going to get large PvE updates over time with this upcoming year, with stuff like the Ceramide Hollow rework, Layer 3, and stuff like that potentially leading up to the Central Luminant as early as 2026. And yes, there's a lot of PvE to work with, but during the downtime when we aren't getting PvE updates, the only real thing to do is either farm bosses you already know how to do, or play PvP. Small spoiler, but I've heard that there might be new leaderboard name color achievements for Valve Iron, including beating every Valve Iron Origins Lord Regent boss, so maybe you could work towards something like that, so that way once that update comes out, boom, you just get like a purple name on the leaderboard. But Deepwoken's longevity really comes from PvP more so than PvE, because the lore and PvE in the game are the biggest parts of it, but the downside comes from the fact that once you beat something to do with PvE, it never changes. So while most people will run bosses over and over again to get the gear that they want, once you finally get what you want, then you basically have to wait another year for the next actual major PvE update. Meaning you have two choices: be one of those people who spends all their time farming the same bosses and PvE events every day on loop for no actual reason, or actually picking up the PvP and playing it, which can be fun sometimes depending on what you do, but I would say stay away from Chime of Conflict unless you're really bored, because Chime of Conflict is not fun. It's like all of the fun taken out of Deepwoken PvP, and then that's what Chime of Conflict is. I like the chaos of Deepwoken PvP. I like the bells, I like all the stuff you can do in the overworld, I like the boats, I like the raid bosses, I like ganking, I like 5v1s, alright? But Chime of Conflict doesn't have any of those fun, chaotic parts of the combat, so it's too structured, and in my opinion, it's very boring. But, you know, it's better to get background footage for it, because it's faster to get footage for that than to find a good gank. But as opposed to PvE, PvP can always be fun, because you have enemies that are real people. Like, yeah, the Duke of Aristia is not going to get any stronger, Chaser's not going to get any stronger, not even the Heart of Enmity is going to get any stronger. But whenever you're fighting players, no matter how good you are, there's always someone who can challenge you. There's always a satisfying, long, drawn-out fight that you can have in PvP that you can't always have in PvE, because once you learn an enemy's patterns, that's really just it for that enemy. You no-diff them every time. But as a whole, I'd say the easiest way to figure out if you want to play Deepwoken is literally just playing it when it's eventually at least temporarily free. Worst case, if you live in a country like the United States where the cost isn't inflated by having a weaker currency, honestly, you could just buy it. It's like $4, bro. The game costs less than a sandwich, and if you enjoy it, you get hours upon hours of enjoyment and playtime from it. And worst case, you're down like a slice of pepperoni pizza. I'm a fat fuck, so yes, I equate value to food. And that's my only F word of the video, so parents watching, this video remains PG-13. Don't tell your kids to take off my videos. Or else. But also tell your kids to watch the live channel, because that's where the brain nourishment comes in. Raycon Live. Videos every Saturday. Not last Saturday, but there will be one this Saturday. Videos every Saturday. Brain nourishment. Anyway, although I don't think that Deepwoken is fit for most people, chances are if you're on the fence about buying it and you aren't sure if you like it just based on the footage you've seen in-game, I'd probably guess that the game really isn't for you. If you like difficulty in games, go ahead and buy it, but I think a vast majority of people who have bought Deepwoken probably didn't like it, which is why the game always peaks in player counts around huge PvE updates before promptly falling off a bit, and then slowly over time it'll fall off more. Because there's two groups of people coming back for updates like Layer 2, the big PvE and lore enjoying part of the fan base, which I think is most people, and the new player influx of people who buy the game after hearing about a hype, super cool major update about dropping, and then, you know, it drops and they realize they can't actually play the new update without getting majorly into the game, and what it was a year before that, very major update that drew them into the game, so now they're like, damn, I actually gotta play the game to get into the new stuff that people are hyped for, and then they quit the game. It's why like Layer 2 had 60,000 players on release within a day later it was like 45,000. That's just a new player influx, 15,000-ish people just hopping off the game because they realize they can't actually access the new content without playing the game, which is so stupid, but really that is how it works. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. As usual, make sure to subscribe and check me out over at twitch.tv/Reaconteur after this video. I'll have a new song cover for you guys this week or early next week, so buy YouTube membership to hear my song covers, and shout out to YouTube members of tier 2 or higher: Green, Philip, Delusional Mo, Broccoli, Akio Sugikuni, Fun Gun, Xerxes, IXKMB, Drizzy Drake Fan, and welcome new tier 2 member Uni Geo. Please let me know if I said that name right down in the comments below, big guy. I read all the comments, so if you guys have anything to say about this video, or you guys want to know any other upcoming new players, potentially some stuff, then leave it down in the comments. I'll read them. I read every comment, and I'm sure all the new players will appreciate your advice. I hope you all enjoyed. Have an amazing day, and goodbye.